So our first speaker is, in my mind, a controversial figure. Probably the most famous black personality in the cryptocurrency space. And I'm sure you're very interested to see who he is. He's a fellow African, Ugandan, but raised in America. His name is Ian Balina. Karibu Miguel.
All right. Can I take it? Thank you very much. Hello everybody, how are you? Good morning. Okay, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. This is my first official time here on Howard campus. As somebody who's been in DC for over 20 years, I've never really gotten a reason to be here per se, even though I went to GW. But now I can say I've been to Howard University. So thank you for that. Okay, so I just want to understand how the whole room is, right? So who here owns cryptocurrency? Show of hands. Okay. Who's been owning cryptocurrency for more than 6 months? Keep your hands up if it's more than 12 months. 24 months. Oh, some hodlers in here. Mm-hmm. Who was part of the whole crypto space back in 2013? Oh, the OG over here. Somebody over there as well. Okay, very interesting, very interesting. And for everybody else here, who's not a hodler or investor, what makes you be part of the crypto space? Just kind of blurt out. Are you in this for the entrepreneur? Okay.
Supply chain.
Supply chain. What does that mean?
Freedom. Blockchain as it relates to supply chain.
Okay.
Not
so do you work in the blockchain space? Are you?
I'm a professor.
Professor, okay. So professor, entrepreneur, somebody said freedom? Musician?
I teach elementary school students and university students.
Okay, so teaching.
Elementary.
Okay.
And university. Elementary is the focus.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Wow, so we have a very diverse room here. And I think that's really the beauty in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space. So who here knows me? Who has seen my content before? Okay, a good amount of people here. Who here thinks I'm controversial? Okay, well, never believe anything you hear on Twitter, especially from anonymous people. I'll just keep it at that. All right? But yeah, so I'll just kind of tell you my story for those who don't know. Right? I'm Ian Belina. As you mentioned, I was born in Kampala, Uganda. I came to America when I was 8 years old. My parents came to America for an opportunity. My dad came here to pursue his PhD at Penn State. Then we moved down here to Maryland, went to high school in Maryland, went to GW, majored in bachelor's and master's in computer engineering. I'm an engineer. I was actually talking to her about NSBE. I was part of NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, and that really changed my life in college. Like that was really, because I was on a scholarship and I had to really maintain a particular grade point average. And NSBE really put me on, right? And I actually have a brother of mine who's a freshman now in college, and the first thing I told him was join NSBE, right? Because he's also an engineer. But so I graduated grad school, joined Deloitte, worked there for 3 months as an IT consultant here in DC, actually at their offices in Roslyn. Then I realized, you know what? I don't like consulting. Consulting was the worst. I say that because as an engineer, I liked being efficient. But as a consultant, we bill by the hour. So having to sit there and I would finish my work at 1 p.m. But I would stay in the office till 8 p.m. because the rule was you don't leave until the boss leaves. So I would sit there just doing busy work, trying to look busy for 6 or 7 hours. And after a month or so, I was like, can I do this? I'm out of here. So I was kind of blessed because as I was working at Deloitte, I got an offer from IBM to join them as part of their sales team. Their sales team was a sales engineer. And me being an entrepreneur, I did a bunch of, I had this company I began back in college called Leximo. Didn't really go anywhere, but it taught me the skills of really building an idea, evangelizing the idea, and trying to sell that vision and that product. And the skills I learned from that, I was able to parlay into getting a job at IBM, and that became my dream job. that was the perfect job I could ever ask for. I would work at home pretty much the whole week. Then I would have travel every 2 weeks or so. I would travel to client sites. I would cover the Mid-Atlantic, so from Philadelphia all the way down to South Carolina. And to me, it was the best because I didn't have a boss looking over my shoulder telling me what to do. And having he went to Bowie State. So I met up with him. Yeah, Bowie in the house. I met up with him, I think it was in San Francisco. And I was just kind of catching up with him, and he told me about Bitcoin and crypto space. And to me, I just thought this whole space was just the dark web, a bunch of bad actors, people trying to scam you, drug deals on the dark web. And he's like, Ian, I know IBM is doing lots of great things in the blockchain space. Can you put me in touch with the director of blockchain at IBM? I said, that's a very big ask. Why do you want me to put you in touch with this guy? I mean, I don't even know this guy, right? So I began grilling him about Bitcoin and the whole space. And then he told me, yeah, he got into Bitcoin when he was working here in DC as a blockchain developer, and they were looking to integrate payments and transactions, and he just kind of went down this rabbit hole. And then he told me he was launching a crypto fund. And I looked at this guy, I was like, you're 26, 27 years old. What are you doing launching a cryptocurrency hedge fund? Because in my mind, when I think hedge fund, I think like all guys on Wall Street. So when I kind of talked to him about this, I was like, this is interesting. Then me being a businessman and a numbers guy, I'm pretty direct. I guess that's just a part of being an engineer. We don't really, talk around in circles. I said, hey, how much money are you making with this Bitcoin thing? He said he was making 200% just hodling or holding Bitcoin. And to me, as somebody who I had a nice appetite for risk. I'd done investing before. I'd actually dabbled in penny stocks and just gotten wrecked, as they say in the crypto space, right? Before crypto. So I dabbled in marijuana penny stocks. I think back when I was working at Deloitte and IBM, like my first year at IBM, when they were when it was just kind of getting legalized in different countries and places here places here in America. So I was trying to be at the forefront of that wave with the penny stock investing, and I got wrecked. I lost money to a point I got so jaded with investing. I said, you know what? I'm done. Why put money in somebody else's company when I can invest in myself and build my own company? So I went back to being an entrepreneur for about 3-4 years or so. Now, so when he told me about that, 200%, I said, I have to try this out just once. I've always prided myself in being what I call a scientist or engineer, right, in real life, where I don't say no to anything unless I have real world data that tells me otherwise. So I always try to test everything and know whether this works or not. So I said, okay, you know what, let me just test this out, get real world data as opposed to just kind of pontificating whether this is legit or not. So I signed up on Coinbase that very same week, put $100 into Bitcoin, $100 into Ethereum. And I said, okay, you know what? Now I own some crypto. But I knew the first rule of investing is you have to know what you're investing in. So one thing I've always done whenever I want to kind of learn about something new, I go into Amazon.com and I find the top 2 best books in that category or space. So I just went on Amazon, typed in Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and the best 2 books at that time were called Digital Gold and The Age of Cryptocurrency. So I got those books, the audiobooks, because I don't really read that much anymore because I'm always busy and traveling. So I just got the audiobooks, read those books over the course of 3 months or so. And it really gave me a nice history of the space, where the space came from, the actors in it, where it is now and where it was going. And those 2 books really were the guide and the introduction for me to the crypto space. So as I was doing that, I was also just keeping up to date on articles in the crypto space on sites like CoinDesk, Cointelegraph. These are daily news sites for crypto news. And after I read the books, I said, you know what, guys, this is it. I believe now. I had what I call my coming to Jesus moment in crypto, right? I said, I'm a believer now, right? I can see it. But it didn't really happen until January 2018, because after I became more educated, I was willing to invest more money in crypto, right? Because everybody says only invest what you're willing to lose. So at that point in time, I was only willing to lose $200, right? Now that I had more knowledge on the space, after getting my nice sales commission from IBM that year, I put $2,500 into Ethereum and Bitcoin. And in a week and a half, it doubled. I said, holy cow. Guys, sell everything. We're going all in. And because that same week, the prices of crypto went up because Ethereum announced a partnership. They announced the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. They had partnered with Microsoft, Citibank, JP Morgan, all these big Fortune 500 companies that really gave it social proof and the credibility. And I said, this is the fastest money I've ever made. And I was a hustler, man. I was doing everything. I was renting my home out on Airbnb as I was traveling for work. I was an entrepreneur. I had a video production company. I had so many things on the side. But I was like, this was the most passive income I'd ever made that quickly. So I saw the potential. And that year, I also had a goal of quitting my job at IBM because it was a very good job. But I realized that I always wanted to have my own independence and my own source of income. So I knew that I had to find a way to quit the job. And my first 3 years in IBM, I worked as a sales engineer covering the IBM hybrid cloud, IBM Analytics, and IBM Watson. And I loved it. But the last year, I changed over to become an IBM sales executive. And although the money was much better, I was able to basically quadruple my income that year just by switching over from being an engineer to sales. So I kind of went over to the dark side, we call it. I basically sold out as an engineer. The money was good, but it was stressful. The sales culture was very stressful, especially as a minority and being the only minority there. Because everybody's fighting for large commission checks and lots of backstabbing and sabotaging and people fighting for deals. I just knew that I would turn gray. I would get old. I would get very, very old. Kind of like that picture of Obama after 2 terms in the White House. That was going to be me in like 2 years. And I said, I can't live in this environment anymore. And I think this is just kind of part of my personality. I'm always willing to sacrifice the good I have to take a step backwards to go to great. Kind of like the book From Good to Great. And I think it's something everybody has to be able to do, right? Because, I mean, here I was, a young black man. I was 28, 29. My last year in IBM, I made almost $500,000. Everybody, my parents, other coworkers were like, you're crazy to give that up. There are people who are twice your age who don't even make half that money. But I said, you know what? I'm willing to give all this up, to go back to zero, because it wasn't something that I thought was good for me long term, right? So I basically bet on myself that year and said, you know what? By the end of the year, I'm going to quit my job no matter what and go out as an entrepreneur. So I looked at everything I was doing and I said, okay, let me 80-20 everything, right? Basically, per Pareto's law. What's making me the most money in the most efficient manner? It was crypto. So I went all in on cryptocurrency, right? You could say timing was definitely the key as well, right? I have a knack for good timing. But I went all in, began trying to find an edge. Because back then, I was mainly trading. Then I went to a conference, kind of like this, and I met people. And I always just talked to people and I said, okay, who's actually making money? Because this was a crypto conference for investors. I said, okay, who's here that's successful and is somebody I'm trying to model myself after? And I would talk to them and just kind of ask them, okay, what made you successful? And back then I noticed almost everybody who I met who was a crypto millionaire. And this was a term, this was something I just kind of discovered, that these people were early in crypto, but almost all of them made their money from getting in early at the ground floor. They weren't late. They weren't really making money from trading or arbitrage. They're just making money from, back then, what are called ICOs. So I looked into this ICO thing. I said, you know what? This is it. I began investing in ICOs, tossing money at anything that could walk that was an ICO. And that didn't really work. Then I said, okay, you know what? Let's go back to the drawing board and figure this out. So me being an engineer again, that year I had been featured in the Wall Street Journal for a model I built with IBM Watson to predict March Madness brackets. Right? This was just something I did for fun. And I said, you know what? Let's do this with crypto. Let's try to build a model and try to predict the price of crypto, or predict which ICO is going to do well. So I just made a Google spreadsheet, gathered a bunch of different data points, and basically tried to find patterns and insights in the data. And I began doing this online via YouTube. I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, and he says, document your truth, right? Basically, just document the process, kind of like a diary, right? So I would just vlog or do a live stream on my YouTube channel. Back then I had less than 500 people twice a week, just kind of as this crazy scientist or data guy, just talking about my spreadsheet, saying, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. If you think it's helpful, do you have any comments, any insights? Just trying to put myself out there. Then a month into it, I basically had my rankings, right? Of what I thought were the best ICOs at that time. And the top ranked ICO I had was a project called District 0x, DNT. It came out trading, and that same month it pulled what's known as a 24x, I think at the all-time high. Basically $1,000 turned to $24,000. And I was like, wow, this is actually working. And then the next ranked project on there was called 0x, and that did a 10x. So $1,000 turned to 10 grand. I said, wow, I'm on fire. Then I said, okay, maybe we're onto something here. And that's when really my name kind of blew up in the crypto space. I kind of became known as the ICO guy. And long story short, 3 months later, I quit my job at IBM. Because at that point, I had about $250,000 in crypto. And I said, I'm out, because I knew that this was really growing into something bigger and bigger. And I had enough income at that time to really sustain myself. Then, by the end of the year, I became a crypto millionaire. And one of the cool things about that was, that happened when me and my good friend Hen, also from DC, who actually went to Howard, by the way, Hinak, I'm not sure if you guys know him, then Ugo, went to school with me at GW. We were in Tokyo, Japan for a crypto meeting. And that's when we all became millionaires. And we all got into crypto at the same time, and all of us were black. And we posted a picture on our IG or Twitter, everywhere basically. And we're like 3 young brothers that made it, right? And we all quit our jobs that same year, because we all had that same hunger, right? And to us, that was really very inspirational, right? And then crypto is a big roller coaster. So fast forward to around, I would say, spring 2018, right? Bitcoin had gone up all the way to like 19,000, almost 20,000. Everybody in crypto was on top of the world. Myself as well. But then I got a shock of my life, right? Which is kind of one of the downsides of crypto. I got hacked. Yeah, they took $2.5 million from me, just like that. Just like that. And the crazy thing was, I got hacked during my live stream. So the whole world was watching. Right, so I'm also known for that. Right? And so I've been to heaven and to hell. Right? And the crazy thing was, when that hack happened, right, I noticed something unusual was happening on my wallets, because people in the comments were telling me, hey Ian, we see on the blockchain history that the money is being transferred from your wallets, because at that point people had basically shared my wallets publicly online, where anybody could view them, right? And I end the live stream abruptly. I go upstairs to my room. I close the door. I double check everything. I'm like, yeah, I got hacked. But to me, the way I kind of, I'm very stoic in nature, to a point where people in the public community, in the crypto space, thought I faked my own hack, right? Because I wasn't really emotional, right? For me, I just kind of, when I was in my room at that moment, I said, that's an L. Like, they definitely got me. Like, can't really do much about that. But I knew the person I was inside, and I knew that I was going to bounce back bigger and better than ever. Because I was like, I'm not going to let these hackers take away my essence, right? The person that makes me who I am. Because they're trying to hack me to basically kind of like shut me down, right? Because at that point in time, I was kind of the poster child of the crypto space. I mean, here I was, a young black man on top of the crypto world, who came out of nowhere. Before that, and kind of at that point, my stature was bigger than even the crypto OGs, right? And I got in lots of comments online about me being this African prince, this scammer, what have you. You know, the typical stereotypes, right? But to me, that didn't really bother me because my community loved me, and I knew I was making a difference from the people I met on my crypto world tour. But going back to the hack, right? To me, I just knew, okay, this is bad, but this is just a way for me to kind of bounce back and make this something even bigger and better. Because at that point, I knew how to make the money. So I wasn't really concerned about making the money per se, right? Because I knew I was a survivor. I was a hustler, right? I had made money in IBM, I had made money as an entrepreneur, and I had made money investing in crypto. So I knew, okay, you know what? This sucks. Let me figure out a way to bounce back from this, right? So the next 3 months or so, I was just in grind mode, right? And I was just working with my team, trying to find out different ways. I had to become very innovative, right? And then fast forward to about three months or so. At that point in time, we got our biggest corporate sponsorship to date. Actually, our first one. So a company called Keynote came to me. They were trying to bring me on as this affiliate ambassador or what have you. Basically, here, share this affiliate link of ours and we'll give you some points, right? At this point, I was in survival mode. So I said, no, I'm not here for that affiliate stuff. So I turned to my IBM sales skills I learned from being a sales executive. And really, me and my team put together a well laid out pitch to them. About basically to sum up the pitch at that time, we said we want you guys to be Nike to Michael Jordan, right? I want to be the Michael Jordan to your Nike, right? Because we saw the space was really adopting the influencer model. So we convinced them. Actually, we spoke to several exchanges. We spoke to Binance. We spoke to OKX, KuCoin. This is actually the first time I shared this publicly. But at this point, I mean, it's kind of over 1 year, right? And they came back, and they gave me a corporate sponsorship, which was well worth over 7 figures. We think this was the biggest influencer deal in crypto history at that time. I mean, obviously, it's kind of hard to have the numbers, right? But I mean, it was a 7-figure deal. Like, because the firm I was working with represents people in Hollywood, like the Kanye's, the Beyonce, DJ Khaled. I had them on my team helping me bringing in new business, right? They basically handle all my biz stuff, my business development. So at that point in time, the deal was almost the same amount as the money I lost in the hack. So in 3 months, I had made the money back like that. And while the public was speculating on what happened, whether I faked my hack to avoid paying taxes on crypto or what have you, I was just grinding. And to me, that really showed me my character because I knew that when my back was against the wall, I could always find a way to bounce back. So fast forward into all of that, and 6 months, by the end of the year, right, because At this point, we're doing a crypto world tour. So we did 35 countries in 12 months, going around hosting events, kind of like this, events in London. We had over 1,000 people in London. We were like little rock stars. 1,000 people. At one point, we walked to the venue for the conference, and there was a line outside the street to come see us talk. And people were like, is this a concert or something? They said, no, it's crypto, Ian Bellina. I mean, this is basically 2018. Went to Russia, everywhere. Then ended the tour in Africa. And I think that was really the best part of the whole trip, because it was the first time me going back to Uganda after over 21 years. I went back there, and just being there and seeing everybody in the crowd who looked like my mother, my brother, my sister, family, who looked like me and was there for blockchain and crypto. And there was just something in the air that I hadn't seen anywhere else in the other 35 countries I had been to. So kind of fast forward as I kind of wrap this up. So by the end of the year, everything was good. Then out of nowhere, the crypto market kept on tanking and tanking. And then the corporate sponsor chose not to renew the deal for 2019, right? Just kind of based on the market tanking and their budget constraints. And I was basically kind of now back against the wall trying to find ways to innovate, right? Because in crypto, you always have to keep on innovating. The space changes so much. It evolves almost every 2 to 3 months, right? You just blink an eye and you'll be out of business in crypto. Things happen that quickly. But throughout everything, I've kind of learned the ups and downs. And now I'm taking everything I've learned as an investor, as a content creator, and now I'm putting this into a brand new venture I'm launching called Token Metrics, right? So now I've been working on this for the last 1 year, taking what really brought value to my community, the spreadsheet, where I would share my investments and my rankings, and now building a platform that's more dynamic. So kind of think of this as kind of like a Morningstar for crypto, or like a Bloomberg for crypto, where the retail investor, I've learned in the last 2 to 3 years, there are 3 main things that investors get wrong, right? Because you have to first pick the right investment, which is very hard to do. Then you have to buy at the right time, and you have to sell at the right time. And most investors get one of those 3 things wrong. They may buy the right asset, for example, Bitcoin, right? Everybody knows Bitcoin is king, right? Bitcoin has the best fundamentals. But if you bought Bitcoin in 2017, December 2017 or January 2018, at $19,000, you lost money. Doesn't matter how good it was. Doesn't matter whether it's a diamond or not. Maybe if you're dollar cost averaging, your costs kind of go down, right? But most people I know, the average investor is not dollar cost averaging, right? When they put the money in and it goes down, they don't want to put money back in again, right? So with our platform, we're trying to make this simple for the average investor, right? So we're trying to help them find the right investment to make in crypto. So we have a new team. So I've kind of learned from my lessons, my mistakes, because just like everybody, I also lost some money as the market came down. And I've had my big public failures, like Sparkster, right? Sparkster was a project that basically scammed the whole crypto space, but mainly me, because they leveraged my platform and my audience and my community to raise a bunch of money and basically overpromise and not deliver anything. And that made me go back to the drawing board and say, okay, what mistakes have we made? How can we avoid having this happen again? So we brought on blockchain developers from JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, brought on traders, basically building a better team with lots of other subject matter experts around us to now create a better system of scoring projects, right, from fundamentals. So now we have developers going through the code, testing and trying to break everything, talking with the CEOs, the CTOs, hosting our own nodes, doing test transactions, all of this before even really scoring the project, right? So now we score the projects on 3 main things, right? The fundamentals, right? So kind of like on Wall Street, the fundamental analysts, we score the fundamentals. Then we have the technical analysis. This is now mainly automated with software. And then we also have the technology, right? Doing a very in-depth code review. Then we get all of this and combine this into one single holistic score, right? And all this is going to be available on tokenmetrics.com. The platform is currently in private testing. We're not sure when we'll launch yet, but ideally when we launch, we'll probably have a free model where our audience can go there and get IEO reviews, because that's kind of the thing now, right? But the idea is for us to filter through all the scams, right? Because that's kind of what my community knew me for. And the space is definitely getting more and more saturated. And for us, we're trying to bring a data-driven approach, which is what we're known for, and now also add on machine learning and all these other capabilities that are typically reserved for the institutional investors as opposed to the retail investor. We're trying to bring this to the average person so they have as much data and information to make the best investment, and really to simplify what they're doing, right? To help them find the right investment, buy at the right time, and sell at the right time. And we think if we can get all those three right, then we can help people make money and avoid taking L's, as we say. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. Yeah?
Okay, so I
You wanna
work
make?
at Bowie State University, and my name is Ryan Cooper, and Ian, we met 2 years ago through Timmy and them down in Africa, I believe. But I just wanted to reach out and say, would you be willing to stop through Bowie State to help grow this crypto? Because we have a following. I have a blockchain association there, and I know you and you know me, and I would love to bring you through and just grow this thing, brother.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Just, after this, give me your contact info or Telegram, right? Give me the details for the event, and I'm definitely down to go. I'm based in DC, so anybody in DC, I'm always around. Unless I'm traveling, I'm typically...
Ever consider being an accredited investor in traditional stocks? Is there any pathway for someone to be an accredited just a crypto, or is Token Metrics going to offer some type of pathway to get more people to be accredited investors in the climate?
I mean, getting more people to become accredited investors is going to be tough because there are income requirements and net worth requirements, right? But the idea is because just kind of being honest with you, one thing I've learned because I have a large retail investor base. I also have a large hedge fund or institutional investor base as well, but that's always small, right? But one thing I've learned from the average retail investor, right? Unfortunately, a lot of them in crypto just blindly invest in anything. Anything people influential like me or others. But we want to make sure we do it in a very compliant fashion with the SEC and everything, right? So we're actually working on some things to really innovate the space, right? We can't really discuss most of it publicly yet, right? But we're trying to do everything by the book, right? In the most legal, compliant fashion. I mean, I've gone almost broke just on legal fees of trying to get this qualified and approved. But I would say, for the average investor to kind of get them into crypto, it starts with education, right? Education as they get more comfortable, and also helping manage their risk, right? So for example, one of my biggest public failures at this point has been Sparkster, right? Because at that point in crypto, although the market was kind of going down, my community trusted me a lot to a point where lots of people around the world would just blindly invest in anything I had ranked. Right? And unfortunately, I had that project ranked very high, and lots of people just blindly invested. Right? I've heard stories of people going to the banks to get loans to invest. And this project, when it came out, after 1 year of stalling, when it came out, it went down 95%. So lots of people lost money. Myself, everybody, it definitely did tarnish my image. Right? So I've learned a lot probably from that over anything else, especially how retail investors think and their mindset. And I definitely understand why the SEC has these very stringent requirements for catering to retail investors, right? And to me, it's been our biggest learning lesson, but also teaches us the psyche of the retail investor, how they think, right? Because when people are blindly investing or getting loans or what have you, or maxing out their credit card to invest into crypto based on what somebody said on YouTube, it is definitely a problem, right? And that's something even myself I can definitely admit, and it's something we have to rectify, right? So I think risk management is really one of the big things for crypto, right? People treat cryptocurrency as gambling, right? I've seen lots of different Telegram groups, because most people in crypto are on Telegram. Lots of different Telegram groups where people would just send money to somebody halfway across the world via crypto or smart contract to invest in a pool or ICO, and lots of them got scammed. There have been lots of exit scams, Ponzi schemes, what have you. BitConnect is also famous, right? People have been very blindly trusting in crypto because the space moves so fast and people are willing to risk it all to make money, right? And it's definitely very unfortunate, and I think it's something that has to be managed, and I definitely understand why, especially here in America, the regulation is very, very tough for crypto companies because of that. And I think it's definitely justified, right? Because now, for example, we had the first SEC qualified security token offering, Blockstack and Props. And the stuff they had to go through, like just going through their offering statement, is almost 100 pages long, maybe even longer. And I think for some people, they may say this is against what crypto stands for because it's not decentralized and the SEC is playing police. But there's so many scams in the space that I think, and with the average retail investor so naive, right? I think it's something that's needed to protect them, right? I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that's.
My question was more like, many people in the Black community, many people were not at that level to be. So what's the pathway to get to that?
To make the money to invest in crypto.
No, to be a accredited investor. Even if is there going to be any pathway that people? I'm only interested in crypto. I'm not just being an accredited investor in other areas.
Yeah, I mean.
So I didn't know if Token Metrics was going to focus on the education component.
Yeah, so we're different from most platforms in that because we have experience creating content, we'll be creating content as well as the platform, right? So we have a platform already, right? But it's still in testing. But we also have the social media platform. So if you go on our Telegram channel, just search Token Metrics, or just go on YouTube or Twitter, Token Metrics, right? This is our platform, and it's all purely on education, and we're trying to do it in a totally different manner, because people kind of have known me as being a big shill, right? Even though I think everybody in crypto is a shill, but I was kind of known as the king of shills because I was very promotional, right? With this platform, we're trying to do everything by the book, zero shill, fully transparent, full disclosures and everything. So we're basically going back to the ground floor and starting all over in a very compliant fashion. We have security lawyers working with us and kind of have gone through and looked at everything to make sure we're doing everything in a fashion where there's no touting, no shilling, and we're just fully offering value to investors, whether retail or otherwise. Okay.
After you got hacked, how did you harden your wallet?
After I got hacked, I got hardware wallets. I mean, that was a big mistake I definitely made, right? I was definitely very naive, right? Even though I was a public figure, I just never thought they would get to me, right? I guess I was cocky or just busy. I mean, I think to me the issue was I was traveling a lot and having to go and travel this and that, all right? And I felt paper wallets were more secure at that time. But I got hacked because I had copies of my keys on my computer, and when they got access to my computer, they got to them.
I
Yes?
just wanted to quickly respond to your question about accredited investors. Accreditation really comes into play when you're dealing with securities. If you're dealing with a non-security, then being an accredited, it's open to retail, right? So like Bitcoin and Ether, the SEC have said they are not securities, or they won't treat them as investment contracts. But anything outside of that, then you have to be worried about whether or not it is in fact a security, and that's when accreditation comes in.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, what do you think about STOs? Do you think it has a good future?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think security token offerings are the future for American projects. They're the only way, I think what's really interesting is if you look at Blockstack, right, their paperwork with the SEC, they basically said, we're filing this because we have to, basically, right? Even though we don't think we're a security token, we know that we have to in the US. And then recently, actually last week, they filed a follow-up filing with the SEC. I believe it's called U-1, something like that. Anyway, saying that they're speaking to foreign exchanges for listing, which I find very interesting, right? Because it's always been the question, security tokens have no liquidity, right? But it seems like the SEC is saying, if you're an American project based in the US, you can only trade on what's known as an alternative trading system, an ATS. And right now, there isn't really, I mean, I know there's T0 and Open Finance, but those have no volume, no liquidity. But it seems the SEC is fine if you go on a foreign exchange that bans American investors, because they just care about protecting American investors. So if that's the case, so I'm very curious to see how that transpires over the next 1 to 2 months. But if Blockstack and props end up trading on Huobi, on Binance, or what have you, I think it's going to be a gold rush for American SDOs, because they have a pathway to listing like all the other non-American projects have had, if this is what the SEC kind of turns a blind eye to. Victor, how are you, man? Good to see you here.
Yeah, good to see you again. Thank you very much. Awesome work. My key question is around Africa. All right. Obviously, as you know, that's my core concern.
Yeah. I last met him in Africa at the African Blockchain Summit.
Correct. So I was in Uganda, and obviously, as you probably know, I work with Dell, Cisco, and all that, like in Africa, right? So before leaving to go into the blockchain space. So my key question is, most of the things we're discussing today here in the Black Blockchain Summit is centered around, how we're going to grow the blockchain community, the cryptocurrency. What's your strategy, basically, especially as it concerns Africa? And the reason why I'm saying this is I flew in from Nigeria yesterday, and last week I was at Central Bank of Nigeria. And then I was speaking to one of the directors there, and they're very open to a lot of things. Africa is still very open to a lot of things, all right? So, and there's an importance, as you probably observed in Uganda, to have great synergies. And stuff. Things can still evolve. And when I speak today, probably I'll show some of all those things. While some of those things are things America is still very hesitant about, but Africa is still very open to it. So it's important. Why for Africa is that? For Africa, it's real. There's hunger, there are issues, and these things are solving it. And the government's ears are open because the people's voice are very loud. Okay? And that's why personally, I always say that blockchain was created for Africa. So for that reason, it's important. So it would be good to know your strategy as well. Okay? How you can, what your strategy is and your plan to synergize. As you know, Keynote has constantly been, with, and I want to give props to what your team has been doing to support QBitX. And we're closely working with regulators and all that. So what's your strategy so that we will see how we get this, because it starts from there.
Yeah, I mean, so my strategy kind of initially was just to go there on the ground and see what was going on. Right? I didn't want to be that guy who comes in and claims to know everything, right? Even though I've not been there in 21 years. So when I went there to Africa in December 2018, it was just to kind of see the lay of the land, right? I went to Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, Egypt, and just seeing how people were using blockchain and crypto, right? And one of the things I kind of saw immediately all across the board was really exchanges, right? Getting access to crypto, right? That's why I definitely have been keeping tabs on your project, QBitX, right? Because I think what you guys are doing, trying to really build a global exchange, but catering to Africa, right? Because nobody's really doing that right now, right? Everybody's catering to North America, Europe, Asia. Nobody's building something for Africa, right? So I think what you guys are doing is definitely great. And then once I'm kind of gone there, just exposing people and my audience around the world to what's going on in Africa, right? So when I went there in July for the African Blockchain Summit, just bringing my content team and just documenting everything, right? Doing interviews with you, with other people, and just kind of showing, guys, there are people here who are actually working and building amazing things to bring blockchain and crypto to Africa, right? Because as our host said in Nigeria, right? This is the next frontier, right? Africa is the next frontier, right? As you said, right? Because the way the currencies there are, right? Blockchain and crypto was meant to help the unbanked, or the most unbanked part of the world is Africa, right? So I definitely agree with you on that. That definitely crypto blockchain is meant for Africa. And I think the main thing is once people like me and others start going there, right, we have to get more and more people from around the world to come to Africa. Because one thing I've noticed, there's so many people who talk about helping the unbanked, and they've never been to a developing country. So to me, they automatically lose credibility, right? Because one thing, when I went there, and I was there on the ground floor at events like this, hearing people talking about how they use crypto and blockchain and how it's going to transform their economies. Then going back to the messaging I was hearing on the ICOs in America or Asia that are going to help the unbanked in the developing countries. And I'm like, do you even know they can't even get onto an exchange yet? So how are they going to buy your token? Right? So let's first solve that problem, baby steps, before we try to go to the moon. Right? So I feel there's definitely lack of understanding from people in the developed world, right? And I think that will change if they actually go there on the ground and meet people like you and see the actual problems, right? And I think the problem you have is the biggest problem right now, right? Which you guys are trying to solve. Yes. How are we doing on time? Okay.
The first 19 years of the 20th century, and I'm not philosophical, to some of us that what's going on now is a centennial push from that period, but being able to solve the challenges that happened in that whole century. We go to the next 2 centuries, and interesting enough, it was to go to Africa, to build up Africa, just as what is happening today in terms of the unbanked. How do you see the business people, not so much just the political people, in terms of they moving forward with not skewing to go forward to Africa 100 years ago in a practical way through our children to go into 500 years?
Okay. Just to make sure I understand your question. So can you kind of rephrase that again? So how are we going back to Africa to
I'm not, it's always forward. It's always forward to Africa.
Yeah.
Because people have never left. And I'm not being philosophical. I'm talking about having money. When J. Edgar Hoover mentioned that this so-called Moses had $1,000 coming in, and the British were doing what the British were doing, and the French were doing what the French were doing, and the Germans were doing what the Germans were doing, it was to block, just as you mentioned about the 2.5 million, that's about you and others have gained. How do you protect yourself from that happening over and over and over again? We were not in a position to protect ourselves because there were not certain things in play. It did not mean that the people were not headed that way. But we needed to have people who are in, well, whatever it is, the various engineering. But engineering, I heard you mention about, it strengthen your character.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to have resolve, and you have to be, I mean, for me, I've always liked adversity, right? I never back down from anything. I always like a challenge, and I have supreme belief in myself, in anything, right? If you took me to the moon, I'll build a rocket ship back to Earth. That's kind of the mindset I have. So anything I do, no matter what the stage is, the pressure is, I always know that I will find a way, right? So as you mentioned, when I got hacked, I mean, I knew it sucked, but I mean, there was no way to undo it. What was done was done. I had to basically find a way forward, right? I just said, always forward, right? Because I knew that the past, at that point, the hack was very upsetting, and it was even more upsetting because I was planning to buy my parents a home, right? A nice home, like $1 million home. And I was planning everything, okay, saying, okay, here's this nice deposit that's gonna go down, and then they come like this. Take away not just my money, but even the dreams I had for helping my family, my parents, right? And that was probably the most upsetting thing out of everything. But I knew, okay, this is a lesson I have to learn from, right? It's kind of like the world is telling me something, right? Let me take the lesson from this, store that into memory, and then move on, right? Because me dwelling in the past means I can't focus on the future, right? And me dwelling in the past means I have no future, right? Because I have to always be forward, right? If I'm busy sulking in my misery, right? Then how can I focus on the future? So the only thing I had to do was just kind of say, okay, I've learned from this, let me move on, right? That's why when it kind of happened publicly, people didn't really believe I was hacked. Because they said, how can this guy not be upset if he got hacked, right? He must have faked it, right? Even though there's an FBI case on this and everything, and I'm getting updates on them, right? But the public has no idea what's happening, right? They're what I call headline readers. They read something on the headline, don't even skim, don't even read the entire article. Maybe read the first paragraph and that's it. And they claim to know everything with no context, right? And nowadays, especially in crypto, there's fake news everywhere. Anybody with a blog can post anything, and because there's no regulation, I mean, they can really say a whole bunch of stuff. So even people who hated me, because back then, I was known as that guy who would kill projects, because there were so many projects I just called outright scams. So I know I have so many haters from so many projects that I basically ruined. Actually, I know about 2 weeks ago, one of my business partners, Ugo, reached out to some project just talking to them, right? Saying, hey, how are things going? They're like, the company's out of business after you gave us a bad review last year. I was like, damn, right? But I was basically known as that guy, right? Because in a space filled with so many scams, I was the guy who was saying scam, 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 scam. I mean, I definitely didn't get everything right? I definitely had some wrong picks, right? But the idea was to filter out the bad projects. And by doing that, I also made lots of enemies, right? And that's why, especially when I went through lots of adversity, they all came out of the woodworks, right? Even some people who I thought were friends, right? They were there just kind of like happy to see me fall, right? And it definitely taught me a lot about me being in the public spotlight, especially as a young black minority, right? Because I know one time I was in Dallas, Texas, meeting a fellow YouTuber. He's an Asian guy. Now he was like, man, nobody wants to see a young black guy talking about Lambos and Lamborghinis and making money, right? He's like, don't do that stuff, right? And back then I was like, yeah, I was like, you're an old guy, because this guy was almost 50 years old. But now I kind of see some truth in that, right? So nowadays I'm kind of more reserved, more low-key, less flashy, right? Because now I just kind of want to focus on just purely the analysis, right? Not really so much the flashy stuff, right? I feel like it was a phase I had to go through, and now I've grown from that. Okay. Okay. Well, we can talk offline. Okay. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Great presentation. That was quite inspirational. Can you give me a big round of applause?